The shooting star leaping through the sky like a tiger, defying the laws of gravity. I'm a racing car passing by.
Welcome to the Rotary Club of Seattle. We are the fourth oldest club in the world, where our theme is to gather, engage, serve. I'm Nancy Cahill, the current president. Thank you to our greeters, Kathy Gibson, John Hojaboom, and Fedva Dickman to welcome us all here. We also have others joining us on Zoom today. Pete Delaney is expertly serving as our reporter today. Today, we're going to begin our meeting. Instead of starting with a song, we're going to have the inspiration and the song combined in a way that you will have to see. We welcome Bill Center and Don Murphy. Thank you.
Zoom, but my days at the podium are over. Okay, you can applaud now. Okay. Yeah, it has been a privilege. This past month, I felt especially inspired by four people: my dad, Jack, George Gershwin, Tony Bennett, and Admiral Tom Hayward. That's me with my dad at age 3 months. This past see, I should be done at the podium. Dad aspired to be a concert pianist. World War II derailed his plans. I spent the early years of my life with a grand piano in our living room. You will recall, Peanuts, boy, I'm having a tough time. You'll recall Schroeder, the Peanuts character, had a bust of Beethoven on his piano. Dad loved Beethoven, Chopin, Mozart, Rachmaninoff, and he played them all. But if he had a bust on his piano, it would have been George Gershwin. Along with whatever else he was playing, I could rely on hearing Rhapsody in Blue, or I Got Rhythm, or Concerto in F, or another great Gershwin tune anytime my dad sat down at the piano. Gershwin was just 25 years older than my dad. And Gershwin died of brain cancer at age 38, when Dad was just 13 years old. I'm certain Dad was already playing Gershwin, and the sad news must have had a big impact on him. After learning what a brief life Gershwin had lived, I marveled at the extent and quality of his compositions. As a young man, he moved to Paris to undertake rigorous classical study. But the top teachers, including Maurice Ravel, all turned him down out of concern that such study would ruin his brilliant jazz-influenced style. Undaunted, Gershwin composed An American in Paris. And when he returned to the States, he composed the American cultural classic, Porgy and Bess. Before his death, he moved to Hollywood and composed numerous film scores. Tony Bennett was more fortunate. He lived a long life. When he died last month at age 96, he was the undisputed king of the American songbook, which included dozens of terrific Gershwin tunes. In the weeks since, I've listened over and over to his recordings. His duet with Diana Krall of Gershwin's Our Love Is Here to Stay stuck in my brain. I wanted to share it with you, but couldn't figure out how. Then I recalled the words of our late fellow Rotarian, friend, and mentor, Admiral Tom Hayward. He's the one who taught me it's okay for men to tell people, even other men, that we love them. That inspired me. I love my fellow Rotarians, and a few may even love me back. So Don and I are going to present a special Rotary version of Our Love Is Here to Stay. We're going to do it a cappella, which is risky business, but we're going to sing an introduction. We're going to sing the first verse, and then we're going to ask you to come in and sing the final verse with us. We hope that you are now inspired enough to sing loudly. The more I read the papers, the less I comprehend the world and all its capers and how it all will end.
Nothing seems to be lasting, but that's not our affair. Rotarians have something permanent. We mean in the way we care. It's very clear, our love is here to stay. Together we're going a long, long way. The radio and the telephone and
the movies that we know may just be passing fancies, and in time may go. Okay, now the part.
Oh,
yes, it's clear. Our love is here to stay. Not for a year, but ever and a day. In time the Rockies may crumble, Gibraltar may tumble. They're only made of clay, but our love is here to stay.
yeah.
Rotary is here to stay. No serious injuries.
Wow. Well, you'd be happy to know, Don and Bill, we love you. That was awesome and inspiring. And when I have thought of some of the accolades described about Tony Bennett, I love the fact that his very last concert was at age 94 with Lady Gaga. Is that versatility, that he was able to do all that he did in his life and end with a bang with Lady Gaga performing with him? That was amazing. So on a little bit more somber note, I want to acknowledge another 96-year-old that is near and dear to our Rotary Club in the city of Seattle. On Monday night, Don Kraft passed away. His family wanted his Rotary friends to hear this news right away. Don was the longest-serving member of our club with 74 years of membership and perfect attendance. He was the club president more than 40 years ago and a constant and valuable presence in the years since. We are privileged to be joined on Zoom today by Don's wife, Midge, who almost felt like a Rotarian with her active presence here, and the three daughters of Don and Midge, Karen, Berkeley, and Erica, and his nephew, Dave Kraft, who is a longtime Rotarian of our club. Thank you to the Kraft family for sharing this amazing man with us for so many years. The family will let us know when a memorial gathering will be, and we will let you know as soon as we have that information. We're grateful to the Kraft family for being with us today. That means so much. And I would now love us to have a moment of silence in honor of our dear friend, Don. Kind of takes your breath away, doesn't it? We have many guests with us here today. Let me introduce them all at once, and then we'll give a warm Rotary applause after we've heard their names. We have Jeremy Moan, who's the Chief of Staff for our City Council member, Sara Nelson, who is our keynote speaker today. Welcome, please stand. We have Ashish Lakhani, and Shita Lakhani. They are President and CEO of Reliable Products. They are a family-owned business and are interested in membership in our club. Welcome. We have Bill Hogan from Seattle University Athletics, and he's also a political consultant. He's a guest of Doug Seto. And we have Ted Weinberg. He's a council member for Mercer Island and a guest of Marcia Mutisi. Thank you. Thank you for being with us. For our short program today, we have Dr. Yvonne Richards and Lori Walker, who will give us an update on our education committee for our club.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for giving us this time to give you an update on the Education Committee. Lori and I are really excited about the happenings going forward. So just a brief overview for our purpose of the Education Committee. We actually got together to promote educational justice and equity and enhancing the well-being of the Seattle youth and also bringing educational awareness to our Rotarians right here. Our two main focuses have been primarily for the past 2 years on literacy for early learners and scholarships to support young adults in their career journey.
What we want to do today is tell you a little bit about the impact of the grant that we had this past year, and then tell you about what's happening and what we're looking forward to. So we're really excited. Our committee has grown. We'd love to have it grow just a little bit more. So that's why we're here today. But we also want you to be involved. So as you probably know, our biggest program is with UNCF. We give scholarships every year. Here you can see the students that we gave scholarships to this year, mostly freshmen who are attending really for the first time, some sophomores as well. But these are students that are going to University of Washington, but also some HBCU schools such as Spelman, Morehouse, Hampton. We focused a lot on the portfolio project in past updates that we've given you, and that's one of the things that we love about the UNCF program. But today we wanted to show you a little bit more about other things that UNCF does with, in conjunction with the grant that we give them. Each year they do a college and career fair, and here you can see we have colleges from around the country that come to the college and career fair every year. We have businesses like Amazon, Microsoft, Starbucks, Dick's Drive-In, who also participate, and we have career panels whereby, and this is where your involvement could be key. We have people speak about different careers, what it's like to work in that particular area, and that's the image you see on the bottom here. In addition, one thing you may not be aware of is in partnership with Alaska Airlines last year, UNCF took 55 students to Atlanta to visit HBCU schools. So here's an image of that. This is something that they're going to do in this coming year as well.
All right, thank you so much, Lori, for that update. And then as part of Black History Month in February, we brought to you guys for educational awareness, Dr. Brent Jones from Seattle Public Schools, and he provided an awesome update of the state of the Seattle schools. We welcome you to reach out with him if you would like to get involved in any of the projects that he presented during his presentation.
Okay, and then as Yvonne, I think Yvonne said, we try to focus on literacy as well as scholarships, so kind of early learners and young adults who are moving into things. Now, this past year, we didn't have a grant for literacy. However, one of our committee members, Tatjana Serlina Spady, her family and friends, they put together a book drive. They sent 300 books to Côte d'Ivoire, and at their own expense did that. So we really applaud. This is kind of the commitment I feel like our education committee members have. So that was awesome. Thank you. So what's coming up in the education committee? we are going to,
And that's okay.
Yvonne's going to do that one.
Yeah, so things up coming up, 23-24. We want to continue the momentum we have with our education committee, and we're going to continue to work with UNCF. We're going to continue to engage, enable, and ensure that the 11th and 12th grade students are equipped with the tools and the access and exposure necessary to reach their dreams and aspirations of attending universities, colleges, trades, vocational schools, whatever their dreams might be. That's one thing that we're going to work on going forward. And yes, we are actually excited to bring this next one to you, which is the Dolly Parton Imagination Library Project. Laura and I were just fortunate enough to attend her celebration yesterday, where Governor Inslee proclaimed August 15th as Dolly Parton Imagination Library Day. So it was just a fantastic thing. Dolly Parton started this project 30 years ago, and she's given out books to 211 kids. The program offers books to children from birth to 5 years old. They receive one free book per month, and the parents are able to read to the kids. We know the more we get books in the hands of kids, or even know that they hear words, it's going to help them with literacy going forward. And so she's done an awesome, fantastic job. Okay, so far, about 211,000 kids have received books. So we're fortunate for that. Rotary is also being featured in the Seattle Times. So if you see that, it's really huge because of the work that she's done with literacy.
So there's a couple of things in addition to those two grants that we're doing this year, which is really focusing on some things that we're in the works with. We are doubling down on literacy and we're planning a fellowship event focused on the impacts of adult illiteracy. This is something that we want to get everybody involved in.
Right, so upcoming, how can you get involved? We will be a mentor for students, right? We talk about the portfolio project. Now is the time to sign up. The program starts on August 26th. Participate on the panel of a career fair. Sign up now. The event is in October 1st.
The career fair that I mentioned before is definitely something that's happening in October, but we would love to get your wisdom and experience in the hands of students who are just trying to decide what their career will be.
All right, and spread the word about Dolly Parton Project, how you can get involved. We have about 4 zip codes that Rotary in Seattle 4 has actually activated, and all they need to do is log on and actually sign up to get books in the hands of children.
And lastly, we could use more members. We would love to have new people come to our committee. So we'll be sending out some information with some of these opportunities. Thanks so much.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Bill's phone here. At least we didn't get any exciting calls while our speakers were up. Thank you so much for that educational update, Yvonne and Lori. We appreciate the wonderful work your committee does. Now I'm pleased to invite Rotarian Dominique Musafia, to introduce our keynote speaker. Welcome, Dominique.
Good afternoon. It is my privilege to introduce Seattle City Council member Sara Nelson as our featured speaker. She was elected to position 9, a citywide seat, in 2021. Her term ends in 2025. Sara began her work at City Hall as a legislative aide for Richard Conlon in 2002. For 10 years, she worked on affordable housing, transit, environmental protections, and takes pride in her work on the Land Use Committee as well. 2009, Sara took a hiatus to establish Fremont Brewing. I hope you've all been to their delightful urban beer garden just steps from the Fremont Bridge. It is now the 3rd largest craft brewer in Washington. Sara espoused a community-focused business model in her work with Fremont Brewing. Indeed, the company has won numerous city and statewide awards for their success and for their leadership on sustainability issues. While she was working at Fremont Brewing, she was also serving in the policy leadership group of the Seattle Chamber. What excites me most about her leadership at City Council is that she understands the politics of making laws, and she understands how those laws play out for individuals and businesses. She prides herself on a common sense, fiscally minded approach to city government. She chairs the Economic Development, Technology, and City Light Committee, and since taking office, she has worked with small businesses to address crime. She's worked with small businesses to create a storefront repair fund. She's passed hiring incentives for SPD officers. She's increased access to addiction treatment. She's established the Seattle Film Commission to support the film industry in Seattle. And she wrote a bill to make knowing possession and public use of illegal drugs a gross misdemeanor in Seattle, which, as you probably heard in the news, fell short in a 5-4 vote. I think we'll be hearing more about that today. Sara considers herself a policy wonk. She listens to the Seattle Channel for fun. She lives with her husband in Green Lake. They have a son in college and one finishing high school. She graduated from UC Santa Barbara in political science, and Dr. Nelson has a PhD in cultural anthropology from UW. Sara's official City of Seattle bio states that she is a terrible, this is a quote, a terrible karaoke singer. Well, I have been to karaoke with Sara numerous times, and I can personally say she will own Son of a Preacher Man. Sara is happy to speak for a few minutes, and she really wants to take your questions too. So please give a warm Rotary welcome to Councilmember Sara Nelson.
Well, he pretty much delivered my speech, but he could have embellished on my singing skills. Thank you very much for opening with a song. So first of all, I would like to thank Peter Delani, John Steckler, and the staff at Seattle Rotary for inviting me to speak. This is one of the most, well, you know how long you've been you've been operating here in Seattle, but everybody can trust the Rotary Club for really stepping up on some of the most challenging issues that we've got in Seattle, and doing it without a lot of fanfare, without a lot of hitting the news, but in a continuous spirit of giving back to community. So thank you very much for the work that you do. So as Dominic alluded to, I have a policy and a small business background, and I ran for office because I was worried about the direction that Seattle was going, and I wanted to bring a pragmatic perspective to what I perceived as an agenda-driven council. And I pushed to chair economic development because I thought I could flex my small business chops, and I had a lot of great ideas for how to support small businesses, how to speed Seattle's economic recovery after the pandemic. But honestly, pretty much the first day I came into office, my inbox was filled primarily with emails about crime and homelessness, and a lot of those emails about crime were from small business owners like myself, citywide. Remember, I'm one of the 2 citywide council members, and I felt that their voices had to be heard. And so after touring the U District and Belltown and Columbia City and hearing the same thing over and over again from small business owners, that it's not just about property crime, about repeat break-ins, it's also about violent crime and threats to their staff and customers, I decided to bring them to the table and have a small business roundtable in my second committee on February 9th, 2022, that with representatives from small businesses and business districts around the city. And what came out of that discussion was, well, first of all, it was good, I think, for my colleagues to hear that they're not making this up. It's not an exaggeration. And what came out of that was some practical recommendations that the city could do right now to help. And one example is the Storefront Repair Fund, which is a small grant that reimburses small business owners for damage to their doors and windows from crime, from street crime. So that is one example that, that shows that your voice can count in City Hall. Anyway, last year in March, after the shootings in downtown Seattle, at which point SPD was down about a quarter of its force since 2020, when my 7 of 9 colleagues pledged to defund the police by 50%, I put forward legislation to restart again, a hiring incentive program to try to build up our force more quickly. And that finally passed in May, and it was to use the salary savings from vacant police positions to pay for those bonuses like every other city in the region had. Well, good news is that that passed. It was followed subsequently by legislation from the mayor to actually lift those salary savings. And let's see, $1.8 million were lifted for recruitment and advertising efforts to get the word out about those salary saving those hiring bonuses. Unfortunately, only $327,000 of that was spent. There had been no money spent on advertising by January of this year. There is a large budget for a marketing campaign. That is great. I believe that we need to more urgently just let people know that the money is on the table, and we need to recruit lateral officers from across the country. So I am happy to say that the mayor's office, I think from the change leadership, is stepping up its efforts, and I'm really looking forward to that bearing fruit, because that is one of the biggest problems we've got in Seattle is a severely short-staffed police department. You might ask, why am I giving you so many details? It's because this is the inside scoop. Sometimes it's not very interesting. I ditched the speech where I talk about all the wonderful things I've done because I think it's important for you to know kind of the daily grind of what I do every day. Anyway, crime is not simply a function of a short-staffed police department. I believe that the major drivers of both crime and homelessness, our two greatest public safety and public health crises, is addiction and drugs. And so that's why last year in the budget deliberations, I put forward a budget proposal that would have allowed Seattle to contract directly with private facilities that offer comprehensive evidence-based treatment services. Why would we need to do that? Because I was shocked to learn, and you might be as well, that Seattle has no public funding for rehab. And the harm reduction approach that we do fund hadn't, in my opinion, been working fast enough to make the change that we need to see. Anyway, that budget item failed, but I think that it's important because I think that it put treatment front and center, or at least in my very small world, what that means, and started a conversation about treatment, about addiction, and about drug policy and in law enforcement. And that's what we read about today. So let me just talk a little bit about that because I'm sure you're on the edge of your seats. Last year, 944 people died in King County from overdoses, and people blame fentanyl, but I'll let you know that most of the overdoses are caused by a combination of fentanyl and stimulants. So just having medication for opioid use disorder doesn't quite get at the problem because people are dying also from methamphetamines. Anyway, so in April of this year, I sponsored legislation to prohibit public drug use that City Attorney Ann Davison, Councilmember Peterson, and I put forward on April 27th, which was, I think, 3 days after the legislature failed to act on a fix to the Blake decision. Well, opposition was swift. Advocates for decriminalization came out in full force, accusing us of trying to restart the war on drugs, and the chair of public safety said she wasn't going to hear our legislation in committee because they wanted to wait for the special session, which had just been announced by Governor Inslee. So we waited until May 16th, and when the legislature acted to make the possession and public use of illegal drugs a gross misdemeanor, which I think was a surprise to many people, we immediately resubmitted a bill to simply conform to state law and adopt those provisions into our municipal code so that our prosecuting attorney would have the power to either prosecute or, more commonly, divert those cases to our diversion partners. So that was the goal, and you all know what happened. On June 6th, we fell one vote short of passing that bill. It failed 5-4, and since then, the mayor established a task force, 24 people, to really talk about many aspects of drug policy, community courts, diversion, et cetera. And we're still waiting. And that is the situation that we're in right now. And I am hoping for a speedy resolution, whenever that may be. But I remind everybody that in all this time, in the past 10 weeks, anybody could have resubmitted simple conforming legislation. I refrain from doing so out of the deference to the mayor. But people are dying still. And the gun violence and the crime that is slowing downtown's recovery continues. And so this is an urgent issue that we all should be focused on and try to get past all the finger pointing in the news right now, because we need to work together, the executive and the council and all of us within the council to do something sooner rather than later. And if it took the state legislature 2 years to negotiate all the different perspectives on drugs and law enforcement, I'm worried about just, I don't want a repeat of that in Seattle. So I do want to, before I move on to my next topic, give a shout out to Andrea with We Heart Seattle, because we'd have to celebrate the models for addressing addiction and homelessness that are working. So thank you very much for your work. Anyway, I'm going through all this detail because I'm trying to connect the dots among our most serious challenges that Seattle is facing right now: homelessness and addiction and drugs. And by the way, calling it homelessness now almost is a misnomer, because what we see on the streets that's feeding addiction and the violence that comes from the drug trade, yes, they are encampments, but these are places not where people are seeking refuge because they cannot afford rent. These are places that are magnets. They're drawing dealers, and they're getting away with that with impunity. And that is why we have to sort of reframe the issue before us. And when I talk about homelessness, obviously it's not a monolithic block, but I just want to make sure that we're all we're all thinking about the same thing, or at least I'm telling you what I'm thinking. In any case, so I didn't mean to be the poster child of public safety. As I said, I was all full of great ideas to bring Seattle back from the brink of from the abyss of the pandemic. But because my job is to represent and respond to the top concerns of my constituents, that's what I've been spending a lot of my time on. And some of what I do never makes the news, because a lot of it is trying to improve other people's legislation in my committee work, or just block it. The rent control legislation is one example. The indefinite prolongation of the eviction moratorium is another example. So that is a lot of my time, but every now and then I do get to advance what are my legislative priorities. And just for one example, last year we established the Seattle Film Commission. You might be thinking, why do we need another commission? Well, I did that because it was a campaign promise that I made, because it had been a top priority of Seattle's film community. They were tired of seeing Seattle portrayed on the screen, but having those films made elsewhere. That was depressing the job market in that industry, and we needed industry experts to tell the bureaucrats of Seattle what to do to make it easier to make film here and attract film from outside, the major productions. And so we, took a few months, but we did form a film commission, and those are jobs. Film is the most commercially viable sector of the creative economy, because there are so many disciplines that go into making a film, and those disciplines, somebody can do the editing on a film and yet also have another job at one of our tech companies. And so I'm happy to say that is well on its way. They've been meeting all year, and I have to thank Jeremy, because it was his encouragement and his knowledge of film, another thing I don't know much about, that really got us to where we are right now. So that is just one example of some of the ways that I have been able to make an imprint on the legislative agenda of council. But again, I am focusing on the things that I think you should be, I'll just mention that when it comes to improving or blocking other legislation, I think that you should be paying attention to the efforts of the progressive revenue the Revenue Stabilization Task Force, which is an effort to find a new source of revenue to pay for ongoing expenses that have been created over the past couple of years. That's important to me because I believe that before we go looking for yet another source of revenue, we just passed the Jumpstart payroll tax, and that is the largest tax in Seattle's history that didn't go to the ballot. Before we go looking for another source of revenue, we should really be thinking about our spending and making sure that what we're allocating your tax dollars to are having, is really having a the intended outcome, and that we can measure that outcome and then fund accordingly going forward. So ask me more questions about that if you would like to hear. In any case, what I wanted to say today is that I've been on the job for 1.5 years. I still love my job. I knew what I was getting into, and I believe I am making a difference. I believe that Mayor Harrell is making a difference, that City Attorney Ann Davison is making a difference, because we were elected by people like you who really wanted to see a change in direction. And so I am standing here asking for your help going forward. I'm just one person, and there are 4 vacant seats on City Council, and I'm hoping for some more allies next year. And I want to be in partnership with the people in this room going forward, listening to you. You know how to reach me. My staff and I show up at City Hall every single day, fully staffed, and we pick up the phone and try to solve problems. So I'm here for you, and just give me a ring if you'd like. That's it, and I am willing to answer your questions.
Thank you, Sarah. I want to thank you as well. I have been in council chambers a couple times recently, and you do show up. You're the only one that's always there, and the community absolutely appreciates it.
Thank you for your service. This is a question that's a little bit different. Maybe it's not quite the priority, but I think about it every day. Graffiti.
Yes.
So even as a kid, when I'd visit some other city, I got this idea of these big, dirty cities when I'd see graffiti, and we didn't have that here. So my question is, when graffiti occurs, can we get it cleaned up faster? And another idea is some of the graffiti, you might argue, is nice. We've created a gum wall. Could we create a graffiti wall? That's the question.
Well, graffiti being a transgressive action, art form, whatever, I don't think that you'll get a lot of people to just, confine themselves to all of the on-ramps to I-5. But here's the deal. Last year, the mayor allocated $1.6 million to increase spending on graffiti removal, and part of that was also to celebrate graffiti that is produced by young people and that is artistic. And so what happened? Well, council rejected that. Council also, and so that is a problem, and I'll return to that. Well, I'll just say it right now. We offload some of these essential services to the business improvement areas around the city, and the downtown Metropolitan Improvement District is tasked with removing a lot of graffiti. When you're talking about can we get rid of it faster, it depends on where it is. If it's on public property, well, I don't know. It depends on if it's on parks or SDOT property. No, that was on public. If it's on private property, you will be cited if you don't get rid of it very, fast. And that, I think, is a problem, because that is causing a lot of burdens on people that are just trying to stay afloat in today's economy. So, in any case, that budget item failed. And last year also, 80 police positions were permanently abrogated. They again restricted the salary savings from vacant polices, and that's why I voted against the budget. But I am pushing for inclusion of more graffiti funding this year in the upcoming budget. I think that the mayor will have that in there, and I will fend it off. I'll protect it to make sure that it stays. But I hear you, and it's shameful.
We have a question from our Zoom chat from Dorothy. Is the city moving away from a behavioral therapy focus toward a medical assistance approach when assisting drug-addicted homeless people and jailed drug addicts? Or is it sticking with its long-term preference for talk therapy using longtime city contractors?
Well, the only funding, so it's my impression that the Seattle King County Public Health and in King County's Department of Community and Health Services, I think it is. Anyway, the county's supposed to deal with behavioral health, and their approach is a harm reduction approach that is centered on medication for opioid use disorder. And so when somebody says, we're getting that person into treatment, what they mean is they're getting them hooked up with methadone or buprenorphine to stabilize their opioid addiction so that they can, the theory is, function and not engage in crime to get their drugs or ingest fentanyl that could kill them. So I do not know if talk therapy is a component of that modality, of those services that are provided. Unfortunately, I think that there needs to be more intensive outpatient that combines detox, well, first it's evaluation, detox, and then intensive counseling that goes on for a long time. And let's not forget sober housing, because what do you do if you go into recovery? Where do you live? And that is an issue that I tried to have included in the housing levy that we just voted. No, you're going to vote for it. Right, you're going to vote for that pretty soon. I get them mixed up. But in any case, we need more sober housing, and we mostly need to broaden the range of services and remove all the barriers to access. So if somebody wants to go into treatment, we need to have a number that we can call and get them there. And the problem is that if we rely on Medicaid, those beds are extremely limited. I went to treatment and I decided that night. So it does show you that there is capacity. We just have to contract directly with private providers, and that is what my budget proposal sought to do. I would like to be told whether or not I missed the question altogether.
I think you did well. Thank you.
Thank you for coming, Councilmember Nelson. You mentioned new taxes. The state of Washington recently enacted a capital gains tax, and I've heard the city of Seattle wants to piggyback on that for 2%. Do you have an opinion on how and when that might be enacted?
That is one of the top 3 options that came out of the Progressive Revenue Stabilization Task Force. So one of the options was just jacking the rates of Jumpstart. Another one was city capital gains, and the other one was a exorbitant CEO salary measure. I would not be surprised if that was either baked into the budget, one of those, or gets passed right in advance of the budget deliberations that start in the fall. Again, I will say my position, which is that I will not support any new taxes until a case can be made that we are spending our existing tax dollars wisely.
Thank you for being here. I think my life regret will not be having attended City Hall when Andrew Lewis didn't support you. I have 10,000 constituents across multiple social media platforms that all live here in the city of Seattle, and I would like to come to City Hall and speak at that podium and give the pragmatic, moderate, common sense side of the story. And I don't know when those meetings are. I want to be there. I'm asking your staff to reach out to me to say you should be at this public safety meeting, whether it's around graffiti or what bills to pass. We want to support that, and I need to bring our constituency base to those City Hall meetings to make public comment. So that's my ask, is to get in touch with me.
Certainly, I will do so. And if I can make it seem like something having to do with economic development, I could have a panel in my committee myself. I mean, I did invite small landlords to talk about what was happening to their businesses, because we have to preserve that housing. But I hear you, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you for being here. And this may be a bit of a piggyback on the previous question. You have a room full of constituents, but you also have here a room full of advocates.
Yes.
So what I would love to hear from you is, just from your perspective, what is the most effective way that any of us can advocate with you? What is your preference for how people will advocate and engage with you to get you to listen to whatever it is that they might be really concerned about, interested in, whatever else? Just honestly, just a higher level, your perspective of what makes good advocacy.
Please invite me to your events. If you have board meetings, you have an idea. I see Jeremy telling me what to say. Oh yeah, well, public comment is, so public comment. If you write to council members, do not hit the council@seattle.gov, because then that looks like you're just, if you write to city council, make sure that you ideally write to individuals and then do that 9 times, or at least spell out all of their names. But I also think that it's within your own networks reinforcing the good work that you see council members do. Not just me, but we respond to positive reinforcement. Any parent knows here that, that's behavior modification. And so I think that it's also about what you are going back and telling your community, and hopefully that sort of ripples up to the ears of my colleagues. But public comment, invite me to events. Like I said, I work every day and I go all over the place. Yep.
Thank you, Sarah, for being here. One of the things that we could just answer in trying to get a hold of our council members, we have an election coming up. We all, those of us that live in the city, vote, I hope. And once you get involved in the campaigns and you support those people that you really care about, they're going to listen to you if you telephone them or email them individually. And I know you do that, Sarah, and I think that's important. The question that I have, though, for you is that we have an election coming up, and it's not just 4 council seats. All of the council seats except yours really are up, because Teresa Mosqueda is running for county council, and she probably will win that election, at least based upon the last vote. So it appears that we will have a total possibility of turnover except for your seat in the council. What's your call on those people that are running for the council now that you feel that you are supportive of, that you can share with us?
I want them to show up in chambers for meetings. I mean, if you're asking me what I'm hoping the new council members will do, we cannot encourage private employers to bring their workers back unless we are leading by example. And I failed to get an amendment to the council rules passed that would require people to show up in chambers for meetings, but I was able to make sure that the Seattle channel would actually show the faces of people making comment. I'm not allowed to say names or anything like that. Is that what you're asking me to do? I am involved in many of the campaigns because the success of my agenda and I think the health of our city depends on getting people who, of course, share my values. But in any case, it's very important.
Well, if you've signed on to any of the campaigns, you certainly can let us know because it's public record.
I am not able to say anything about any of the races as I'm speaking as a council member. I have to separate my role as a council member from just an ordinary citizen with First Amendment free speech rights.
So ask her
Hi,
privately.
hi, Sarah Nelson. Thank you for being here. We've had 2 massive fires, encampment fires between I-5 and Harborview, and just over the weekend at Mercer. And I was wondering how these encampment fires are affecting the level of urgency for our city leaders to address those encampments. Thank you.
Well, I'm feeling pretty urgent about it. So what you have to realize is that if those fires are occurring on WashDOT property, we don't have any control over that. I mean, we can browbeat the people at the state to come and deal with it, but that is a constant battle. So when it comes to encampments on city property, rights of way parks, I don't know. if that has changed the sense of urgency of my colleagues. But several cities have enacted prohibitions of camping on public property. The Boise decision does not prohibit jurisdictions from telling people to move from moving a tent from public property. You just have to do it in a limited time, place, or manner. So I believe that Portland prohibits tents on sidewalks from, Andrea, I think it's at night, for example. In any case, I am seriously thinking that that is legislation that is right for Seattle, one battle at a time.
Okay, very quick, rapid fire last question we've got, aligned with something John Bridge said, saying that he hopes everybody gets out and votes. Joyce said that August is hard because a lot of people that are local to Seattle travel, and she wonders if there's any way to, or if anybody's talking about having that vote move to a different time when more people are present.
No. I do not think that that is a conversation right now. I think that the pushback from the county would be, well, you get your ballots 2 weeks in advance. So I do not know who is even in control. Jeremy worked in Olympia, so I do not know who makes the decision to move the date of a primary, but it's not the city of Seattle because it would have to be all of the jurisdictions within King County. I was going to say something about that. Anyway. Do you have any other questions so that I can end on a not so confused note? Mark.
That was not a plant, he said. Sara, we thank you so much for your sharing with real candor to us today. We have a couple little things to honor you with. The first is we make a donation to Harvest Against Hunger in your honor of 600 portions of nutrient-dense produce, which is exciting. And then this is a little gift card that would enable you to come back another time to be a guest at our lunch and bring a friend.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Excellent. Appreciate it. We're grateful to our sponsors, Joel Farrell and Bloodworks Northwest. Please thank these sponsors when you have the opportunity to do so. Now we have our member, Kathy Williams, giving us information on an upcoming Rotary District Conference for 5030.
One of the places I love to visit in the Pacific Northwest is Victoria. I used to go there frequently. I confess I haven't been there for quite a while. Maybe that applies to you too. And it is such a beautiful city with gardens, harbor, restaurants, and the Empress Hotel. Well, if you need an excuse to go to Victoria and stay at the Empress, I've got it for you. That's our district conference on October 13th through 15th. Excuse me, I'm not, do I move it? I'm pushing, okay, thank you. Anyway, sorry. Now, a few of you newer members may go a district, what's a district conference? Yeah, Rotary International of almost 1.5 million members in 46,000 clubs is divided up into districts. And there are actually 529 districts in the world. And some of the districts are really big. They include several countries, like in Africa. And some are pretty geographically small. District 5030, our district, is mostly all in King County, a little bit in southern Snohomish County. So the purpose of these clubs is of these districts is to support the clubs. It actually has money for grants to share information between clubs and make things happen. So once a year, there's a conference of all the clubs in our district 5030. and it is an opportunity to get to know people of other clubs, work for projects together, usually with inspirational speakers, workshops, and special events. And they're really fun. So our one is in Victoria, as I said, October 13th through 15th. So how to register? You go to, and this is all in the newsletter. You go to the website 5030conference.com. And on the top, you can't quite see it in this one, but it has a place there where it says register. You register. Then, well, anyway, I'm not sure where I'm supposed to point to make it happen. Anyway, when you get to the registration page, don't go to member. Go to guest. And then the usual pages to fulfill. If you go to member, it won't work for you. So, long story, but anyway. With also then on the home page, which is not what shows up right here, there is a line that says rooms. That's where you register for your hotel room. Pretty simple. And how do you get there? Well, Kenmore Air, if you like to fly, will give you a 20% discount. You can go by boat and go on the Victoria Clipper. The Princess Marguerite's not running anymore. Or if you want to take a car, you can drive to Port Angeles and take the Blackball Ferry. Any way you get there, you're going to have a wonderful time. So if you have any questions, I'll be glad to talk with you about it. Hope you'll enjoy it. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. I look forward to seeing many of you at the conference and drinking tea at the Empress. Sara Nelson, or other things. Sara Nelson, we are grateful for your elected service and in bringing your business background to make an effective difference for our City Council. We're excited to watch your continuing role and influence as we all work together to revitalize our city. In closing, I was inspired by our Education Committee sharing. I wanted to share some thoughts about education written by Albert Einstein. He said, "Education is not about learning facts, but thinking about ideas. Learning is a treasure that will follow its owner everywhere. Always walk through life as if you have something new to learn, and you will. Anyone who stops learning is old, whether they are age 20 or many years older than that. An investment in knowledge pays the best interest." We are adjourned.